The cortisol awakening response, it's your ability of your brain to tell your adrenals, like, you have to make cortisol first thing in the morning. Like, it has to spike up. And then it spikes up, and then it gradually falls through the rest of your day. And so some people do it really well. Some people don't do it that well at all. Yeah. Some people overshoot the moon. And so the cortisol awakening response, your rise and fall, that mountain that happens, is super important for things like your blood sugar, setting your blood sugar for the day, inflammatory response. It's the morning part of your circadian rhythm, and it helps tell your thymus gland to kill cells tagged as autoimmune. So what happens is your body, make cells, and before they get sent out to circulate in your body, your thymus gland literally goes down every one and says, are you autoimmune? Are you autoimmune? Are you autoimmune? And if it is autoimmune, it pulls it aside, simple analogy, and then it gets destroyed because you don't want autoimmune cells that you've created sent out. If you don't get the spike, if you don't get that cortisol awakening response, then that little autoimmune cell sneaks out. It doesn't get killed. And so many people say, I have really bad autoimmune symptoms in the morning.
Welcome back, my friend. It is Mike Mutzel here. As always, I'm so grateful. I'm excited that you're here, that you're tuning in, that you're showing up. This is gonna be an awesome discussion with Dr. Carrie Jones. Now, I'll just say, part one was great. So I'll post that right here. We recorded that back in November of 2015 when it wasn't so cool to say, oh yeah, adrenal fatigue, that's been oversimplified. We now know that there's so many other factors that affect the entire hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the HPA axis. The adrenals don't just suddenly stop producing their hormones that they should. So now that it's so cool to say that, but I just want to say Dr. Carrie Jones helped to make this topic a little bit more widely accepted. And so that video, I think it has over 200,000 views or more at this point in time. It's an awesome part one. So check it out. We have the show notes there and all that. This is a part two follow-up. And Dr. Jones really solidifies and kind of indelibly inks in your brain what we talked about in part two and adds in some expanding new notions and understanding about the role that circadian rhythm balance and circadian rhythm function, which we're going to talk about, and ways to improve your body's circadian rhythm, how that affects not only the hormonal system, the thyroid hormone output, peripheral conversion of T3 to T4, adrenal gland output, and gonadal output, sex hormones, estrogen, testosterone, and all that. We talk about that, which is great, but the interconnections between the immune system. We get into leptin and how leptin is an immune modulator. We get into brown adipose tissue and how if you have dysfunctional thyroid gland output, if you have HPA axis dysfunction, well, guess what? Your brown fat's not going to be, uncoupling those free fatty acids and doing its thing. So there's a lot to this. I want to thank Dr. Jones for coming on for part two. And also, we talk about the cortisol awakening response, which is a great test to really kind of get an insight into your body's circadian rhythm and the proper, hormonal release at the right time of the day. So I did mine in August, and I'll be honest with you guys, it was not very good. My cortisol output in the morning was not where it should be. Partly due to like maintaining this YouTube channel, I would edit podcasts at night, I would pre-record podcasts at night, I would stay up late exporting stuff to YouTube and all that. I mean, I love doing that for you, but it was affecting my health. And so I stopped that behavior. So that's a cool test. Again, it's called the CAR test or the cortisol awakening response. It's a great way to kind of look and see if, okay, are your adrenal glands putting out the hormones that they should be at the right time? And also not just the adrenals, the thyroid hormone and other sex hormones. So if you want to save $50 on that test, you can use the promo code High Intensity Health at checkout. Just go to DutchTest.com, look under patients, look under tests, and you can get the cortisol awakening response and save $50. And last but not least, before we dive in the show, this episode is proudly sponsored by Health IQ. As you know, they're a very forward and progressive life insurance company that rewards health-promoting behaviors like exercise, eating a low-carb, ketogenic style diet, mouth breathing while you're sleeping, stress reduction strategies, and much more. So when you embark on those health-promoting endeavors, guess what? You improve your blood sugar regulation. You reduce your body's inflammation. And therefore, your chances of getting an age-related chronic disease like heart disease, diabetes, obesity, autoimmunity, cancer, and much more is reduced. Health IQ gets it, and they want to help you save on your life insurance premiums. If you have children, folks, you definitely need life insurance. That's one thing I would regret not doing sooner because I do a lot of high-impact sports, skiing and bike racing, mountain biking, all that sort of stuff, and I didn't have life insurance when I had Inez. If something were to have happened to me, Inez and Deanna would be in trouble. So I'd encourage you to get a free quote and see if you qualify. You can help support the podcast as well by going to healthiq.com/HIH. Again, to get a free quote and save a little bit on your life insurance, you can visit healthiq.com/HIH. All right, we're going to dive back into it with Dr. Carrie Jones. Hey friends, Mike with High Intensity Health. Thanks so much for tuning back into another video. Today, this is part 2. We're going to catch up with Dr. Carrie Jones and talk all about adrenal fatigue and kind of the myths and I don't want to say lack of science, but we have a better understanding about like what adrenal fatigue really is, and we'll redefine kind of HPA axis dysfunction. And I say part 2 because like right here, I'll post the video that we did, and it was about 2.5 years ago or so. Yeah. And at that time, you know, a lot of practitioners I think have been thinking about this, but they were afraid to come out and say it. So we had a lot of people like, yeah, you know, like the notion of adrenal fatigue is so oversimplified. And then we had, I look at all the comments on these videos.
We had some haters.
Some haters are like, I have adrenal fatigue. This doctor doesn't know what she's talking about. This is, and so what I've learned since then is about people really like to confirm their biases, right? So like wherever they stand, they actively seek out more information to confirm whatever it is. Whether it's keto, they're like, oh yeah, keto is great for this, or carbs are good for exercise, or it's calories or whatever. So it's so funny about the adrenal fatigue thing. But anyway, thanks for sharing that, like really forward thinking and putting your neck out there, because at the time it was polarizing, and now so many people are talking about it. Like, oh yeah, adrenal fatigue, that was yes, like it's more to the story.
They'll put it in quotes now. They'll say, I say I'm adrenal fatigue, but you know what I mean.
Right.
It's not really. The adrenals don't give out. I'm like, I know, I did the YouTube video on it with Mike.
That was me. That was my stuff. That was so funny. All right, so along those lines, let's just like, assuming someone hasn't listened to that video or watched that podcast, whatever. What do we mean? What's this new evolving understanding of HPA axis dysfunction? What does it mean? And like let's just lay the foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I think what I didn't clarify enough in the last video, which caused a lot of haters, is that the symptoms are real.
Yeah.
I completely believe in the symptoms. You're fatigued, you have chronic fatigue, you can't get out of bed, you're exhausted, you're sick. Absolutely, I believe you. But the whole concept that the adrenal glands just give out, they just one day stop making cortisol, or they can't make cortisol. It's not it's not true. It's just not the truth.
It's a little oversimplified.
It's a little oversimplified. What happens is we have all this assault in the day, whether it's inside us, pain, inflammation, blood sugar issues. Outside of us, stress, environmental, you know, the spray that they put in the public bathroom you go into and breathe in. And then it goes to the brain, and the brain goes, we have to deal with this. I'm going to put out cortisol. So the brain tells the adrenals to put out cortisol. So if it's not told by the brain, it doesn't necessarily happen. So I think a lot of people got sucked into, oh, the adrenal glands give out.
Right.
At one point, I don't make cortisol anymore. I'm like, no. They're not like the ovaries. You don't go through adrenal menopause and stop making hormone. You make hormone, it's just at the brain's discretion, and we have to step back and look at how is the brain communicating down, or is it? And that's the problem.
Yeah. So it's not just a matter of semantics. What we're really looking at is like the root cause of what's going on here.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important for people to understand, because then that gives them better levers to change their lifestyle.
Yes.
You know, one of the examples that you brought up was a hockey player who was on his phone at night. And that made me think, you know, too. I mean, so this year the Seahawks, we're Seahawks fans, they totally sucked. And I'm thinking like, I wonder, like these players, and they really are bad, particularly not all the time, but when they travel on the road. And I was wondering like how much of the circadian disruption is affecting their performance and their synchronicity and all that. And so
I think that all the time. And actually even the circadian rhythm, but diet, I don't know if you read this, but Russell Wilson, who's the quarterback for the Seahawks, if you don't know, and as my girlfriend goes, I don't know who Russell Wilson is. I said, he's married to Sierra. She was like, oh, I know who that is. Okay. So he went on an anti-inflammatory diet. He gave up gluten, dairy, soy, sugar, and corn, and he dropped down to, I want to say 9% body fat, but maybe it was 4%. And he, you know, if you follow football, he carried the team. It's pretty much the Russell Wilson team all year. And it goes to show, right? Your diet plays a huge impact in that. And I'm sure he took good care of himself with the sleep. I'm sure he wasn't completely on his phone at night and, you know, staying up super late. And he performed great. And some of the other guys did not. They should watch your podcast. Learn some things.
I really want to go down and visit with Pete Carroll and talk to him, because I'm very curious. Like, there's a lot of money being spent in sports, but you wonder, like, these small little things that we know in this integrative functional medicine space. I wonder if that's being translated, you know, or because you see them on the sidelines drinking Gatorade and stuff like that. So you're like, so if they're drinking Gatorade, they're probably, you know, their hotel rooms have lights and they're on the computer. I mean, I don't know. You'd think that like a basic thing.
I mean, my example was that hockey player, right? The pro hockey players are up late on their phone. You know, pro football players are too, just like pro baseball players. I mean, nowadays with technology, they're all on their phones and tablets and computers and
checking stats and.
Yes, that's totally.
Yeah.
I was going to say girls, but okay.
I'll go with that. Probably that too. Yeah. That is funny. All right. And so I guess to feed this back into the adrenal conversation, can people just have the symptoms of being fatigued because their circadian rhythm is malaligned? So maybe they're still making, and then we'll talk more about the testing that we can do. I think it's really cool because I have a test here from Dutch that we can talk about that. And so could they just be out of line? Like,
yes.
And so it manifests, like you said, people feel fatigued, but their circadian rhythm is just screwed up.
Yeah, and they may make plenty of cortisol. They just make it at the wrong time. So they think, oh, I'm adrenal fatigued. I don't make cortisol. That's my problem. And when really we run the test and we go, no, actually you make plenty of cortisol, but you make it in the afternoon, or you make it at night, or you make through the night, and therefore that's why you can't sleep. But when you add it all together, you know, you just feel tired. But it's actually okay in the total value.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the gland is functioning, its absolute output is fine, but it's just at the wrong time.
Absolutely. We see this all the time, don't we? Yeah. People say, I'm tired in the morning and wired at night.
And I can't sleep.
And then it's
a vicious cycle.
Yep.
Well, I love the test that you guys have introduced at Dutch because it adds in this element of circadian biology that I think has been kind of lost. You know, a lot of practitioners are like, oh, just like, you got your blood work at 8 a.m., just go anytime and just redo your labs. Like I've had a lot of labs over the last 11 years just because I know a lot of friends and all this. And reminding people just to be consistent with like, when do you get your lab work? Because we'll talk a little bit about leptin and TSH and all these hormones that we know can be off. Like they have a circadian element to them and a pulsatile element. So I think it's really important that we kind of reframe this conversation in light of all this circadian biology research.
Even testosterone. Think about testosterone for men. I mean, so many men go to see their doctor at 3 in the afternoon or 4:30, you know, by the end of the day, and then the doctor says, let's get your blood drawn. Like, oh, your testosterone's low.
Yeah.
Like, well, of course it's low. It's 4:30 in the afternoon. It does go down through the day. It's to be, you know, highest in the morning to make other things get up there. And so you have to do testosterone in the morning. So it's very much a rhythm.
I see. But does that give you an accurate, I totally hear what you're saying. So T should be highest in the morning, so that's when we should test it. But does that tell us about the functionality? Like,
no.
Because people like have sex in the evening, like after date night, and what if it's low then? So like, how does that influence like when you test, or does it?
It kind of depends, especially for women, since sex drive is a big thing. So our female testosterone doesn't fluctuate so much during the day. But for example, on the Dutch test, we pull testosterone off of all of the samples and do a weighted average of them. So we can kind of give a woman like, hey, in your day, here's about your weighted average of testosterone, whether it's on the low end or the normal or the high end, just to give them an idea of where they're at. So if it's low, then I know like throughout their day, it's probably not that great because you're averaging low. And obviously when it comes to sex drive, a lot more other hormones come in. Yeah. So if it's after date night or you have sex at night and you feel fine, like absolutely, you can pull it together with cortisol and dopamine and norepinephrine and oxytocin. I mean, a lot of other hormones can charge in and go, all right, we got this. We can make this happen.
So it's not just testosterone. There's
it is not just testosterone. But testosterone gets all the press, right? It's the big hormone that everybody talks about. And it can get misdiagnosed because doctors will just look at testosterone. They'll micro-focus in and they'll forget to look at everything else. And they'll miss the estrogen's high, or they'll miss the dopamine's low, or they'll miss they have a melatonin problem. They have high cortisol or low cortisol, and now they're not addressing the cause.
Right, and then so they might get exogenous testosterone, whether it's creams or patches or gels, and that wasn't their problem, and then it creates other problems. And does this happen with thyroid? Because I get so many questions from people, like here's my labs, like a just random Instagram message as if I'm their practitioner. Like, I feel like my labs are all normal, and this was Datis Karazian's like book cover. You know, like, why do I still feel like crap when my labs are normal? And so it seems that, like, again, doctors look at TSH, they put them on thyroid, but maybe that wasn't the problem.
Or they'll look at TSH and it's normal, and so they just say, well, there's nothing wrong with your thyroid, your TSH is fine. And so when we go back to physiology, the pituitary gland is what monitors your T3. not T4, your T3, and then it puts out TSH. So if your pituitary gland in your brain is totally happy, then your TSH looks normal. The problem is out in the periphery. The problem is you can't get thyroid to your toe or your fingers or your fat cells or your ovaries or your testes, and now you have all these other symptoms. Your hair follicles, so your hair follicles are falling out. And so you get normal, oh, you're normal, your TSH is fine, but they didn't take into account at all that it may not be fine in the rest of the body, cellularly, as we call it.
Right.
Out in the cells.
And the way to assess that, because I know now a lot of your professional work is looking at urinary and salivary hormones and all that sort of stuff. Is blood still the go-to for like reverse T3 and free T3 and all that?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up reverse T3. That's sort of the, how do you tell if your T3 is getting into your cells? There's a T3 to reverse T3 ratio that you can do and get an idea. Because what will happen is the body will make T4, and then if it doesn't make T3, it will turn and create reverse T3. And reverse T3 is inert. It's inactive. It doesn't do anything. So you feel more hypothyroid, but yet your TSH over here in your brain is normal. And so you feel worse, but your lab work looks, oh, you're fine. You're normal.
If you're just looking myopically
if you're just looking at TSH.
Yeah.
Yeah. You missed the big picture.
Yeah. Are traditional docs looking at reverse T3 at this
point?
No. Okay. I feel like I've been out of that world for a little while, and we've been talking about this since like 2007. I mean, this is old stuff. And
for us.
Doctors are still not looking at reverse T3.
I know.
Are you kidding me?
I know.
Anyway, why is that? They just, you know what? They
get trained. They get TSH and in pharmaceutical. If you run a TSH, and what are your medication options? T4.
Yeah.
Levothyroxine, Synthroid. I mean, that's what you do have. T3 as a medication, liothyronine, but not many conventionally trained doctors will use that. They'll say, just go on this T4, your body will convert it naturally itself. And I brought all my nerd papers.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's dive into it.
I have all my nerd papers to show like it's not true. There's so many things that go wrong, and now you can't get T3 into your fingers, your toes, your ovaries, your testes, your fat tissue, your hair follicles, your skin, and you have symptoms.
So it almost can make the problem worse. And I've seen this with people because they go on a synthetic T4. Their problem is underlying issues, inflammation, stress, circadian rhythms. So like you were talking about, so the T3 is going to reverse T3. And I understood this, I could be wrong, that reverse T3 sits in the receptor. So not only is it inert, but it's blocking free T3 from doing its job. So it's like a double whammy. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So you don't fix the root cause. You got all this reverse T3. You take more T4, you're just further suppressing the fire, and then people feel more symptomatic. So where do we start with that? I mean, maybe it can launch into all the different peripheral factors that go into it.
I would say stress and sleep, which is sort of the focus of this, podcast. Absolutely, stress and sleep have such an impact on thyroid health, conversion health, weight loss, detoxification, repair and maintenance. I found this great quote, which I wish I had it highlighted, I would just read it. Norepinephrine. So norepinephrine is one of your adrenal hormones. It's one of your big stress, fight or flight hormones. But norepinephrine's damages because when it's high for prolonged periods of time, it diverts the body away from repair, regeneration, maintenance, and reproduction. And it goes towards things to make you move, fight or flight. So if you are in a fight or flight state all the time, whether it's your job or your significant other or bills or money or your insulin's too high, your blood sugar's too high, you're chronically inflamed, you're exposed to chemicals, then norepinephrine goes up, it stays up, and you have all this damage, and now you're symptomatic. Because if you can't repair, if you can't maintain, if you can't regenerate, if you can't reproduce, it's all the symptoms we know. It's I'm tired, I can't sleep, I'm having a tough time getting pregnant, or I have recurrent miscarriage. I can't heal. I get hurt and I can't heal. I exercise and I feel worse. I mean, right? It's just right. It's just all the same stuff, and it's norepinephrine. In this quote, it's a stress hormone.
Yeah, but we do need norepinephrine to burn fat.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't understand. Like when you start exercising, it increases and it causes lipolysis. But it sounds like chronic exercise or that perceived stress that. So it really comes down to basic stuff.
And I come up with that over and over again. Yeah. I'm such a nerd and I want to know the why. So I learn the why down to the nitty gritty, and then I'm like, oh, but the treatment's the same.
Like,
It's the basics. It's the same basic stuff we all know. Take care of ourselves, get good sleep, hydrate, keep our blood sugar balanced. You know, it's just good basics. Breathe, properly breathing.
Yeah, speaking of which,
right, as we're all hunched over talking to each other.
Right. Well, it's so fascinating. And then you shared a lot of good research over the last week about leptin and how leptin affects, I think it was TSH, but also maybe T3 conversion.
Yes. So leptin resistance. So leptin, as you know, because we nerd out over leptin together. So leptin is in fat tissue, right? And what can happen is women and men can develop leptin resistance, so similar to insulin resistance. So leptin resistance is when your leptin from your fat tissue is going to your brain, but the brain's not listening. So instead of letting go of fat, which is what we all want, usually, it holds on to fat. And so the leptin number gets higher and higher and higher, and the brain's not listening, leptin resistance. As the leptin goes higher, as it gets above 10, I wish I knew what the lab...
It's nanograms per ml, but it could be...
So it's whatever it is in the U.S., which is important to know for people watching other countries. So above 10 in the U.S. range, then what happens is your cells that are converting T4 into T3 stop. It blocks them. And so now you can't make T3, and instead you turn and you make more reverse T3. And now you just continue the vicious cycle, because now you have less T3, it can't bind. So now you're more tired, you've gained more weight, more hair has fallen out, you're more constipated, right? Just all the same symptoms.
You're more inflamed.
You're more inflamed.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Gosh, that is so crazy.
Leptin.
But, so people listening right now who haven't had their leptin levels tested might think, oh, well, level of 10, that sounds like really high. I'm sure I'm a 2, but... 25
is the cutoff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so most labs say up to about 25 or 30. Sometimes you'll see 30. But, and you need to cut that in half even more.
So,
down to
so
10.
A lot of people, what we're saying here, folks, if you're listening right now and you have a body fat percentage above 20, 25, in women, men, I think it's around 15, that there's a direct proportion to how much body fat you have to how much leptin, because leptin is mostly made from the adipocytes, a little bit from the stomach, very small amount. So it's I remember there's a paper, I got to share it with you, Eric Braverman. So he's a MD in New York, and he wrote this paper, it was like 2011 range, and he like categorized all the labs that he's taken in like 10,000 patients or whatever, leptin, insulin, triglycerides, like it was a bunch of stuff, and put them on a plot. And it was funny, like as body fat increased, like insulin just kind of did this, because the body can really like homeostatically, dynamically respond to that and so forth. But with leptin, like as body fat went up, it just was very proportional.
I believe it.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I used to cut my leptin level at a lot higher. I mean, even though 25, I think I used to say back when I was in practice above 20, or maybe it was above 15. But when I read this paper and the authors said anything above 10, and you have a thyroid problem, and you have a reverse T3 that's elevated, like you have a tough time. You need to address that.
It's crazy.
So 10 is my new number because of this paper.
Right. Well, I think testing leptin is cool too, but people can also just triangulate and look at body fat percentage. I mean, that's a little fringy, a little out there, but for people that don't have access, because some doctors are like, maybe if you're traditional, if you're trying to nudge someone into doing a test, and they're not into it, then maybe you could, triangulate that way.
Right. It's a good idea.
But going back to the basics, I want to talk about the immune system, and then we'll transition to a few things. But leptin and sleep. So here's what's interesting. I was, after you shared that on Instagram, I think Monday or Sunday or whatever, I was like diving into it and wanted to try and add some value to the narrative. And so people that have sleep apnea tend to have higher levels of leptin.
Yeah, that's right.
And then once they get on a CPAP, guess what? It changes. So going back to what we were saying, like, dang, like this biology is so complex, but the treatments are so simple. And so, sleep duration is great, but sleep quality. I want to ask you about like mouth taping and nose breathing. Have you dove into that at all?
I have tape at home because of you that I have not yet used.
Okay, I have the Somnifix right here. We'll give you their show sponsor. It's really, really cool. Because you can still talk to your husband. So I thought that was super interesting. So going back to like the fixes, sleep, circadian rhythm imbalances, night shift workers, their leptin levels are all screwed up.
Oh my gosh, everything is screwed up, unfortunately, with a night shift worker. Their hormones are a mess. Their cortisol is a mess. Their leptin is a mess. Their blood sugar is a mess.
Then thyroid, then weight.
Yeah, and then it just cascades down. And I understand the importance of night shift workers. I know why we have them and need them. Some people love their night shift job. They wouldn't give it up for anything. I'm like, I know, but metabolically, you're kind of a mess.
Well, there's some hacks with that, like wearing blue light blocking glasses, melatonin, just inverting your whole rhythm. So you're really getting a lot of light, and then night hours and during the daytime trying to be really dark.
And some people have achieved that when they do adrenal testing, when they do Dutch testing, we'll see night workers and they'll have a flipped pattern, cortisol pattern, like they've successfully done it.
So you can just spot it right there. You're like, this person works at night or whatever.
Well, they'll want to know if it's working for them, because some night shift workers they take a tough time to adapt. And despite having done night shift for a long period of time, they still have a normal circadian rhythm for you and me, but for them, it's not normal. Whereas other, like nurses, especially nurses who do a lot of night shift, firefighters, after a while, a lot of them, if they do it right, just like you said, they can adapt, they can shift.
And that seems to me it's still probably unhealthy inherently.
I would agree.
But they're doing the best under the circumstances. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, the sleep thing, it's amazing. So the book, I have it right here, by Eugene L. Kelly, Chasing Daylight, really, really good book. So have you heard of it?
I have heard of it. I have not yet read it.
Yeah, really good. So this guy, he's the CEO of this KGMP, I think, is a major accounting firm. So he was in charge of like 20,000 employees all throughout the world. And so his rhythm, his circadian biology was probably all messed up, traveling all over the place. And was diagnosed with a metastatic brain cancer and had like basically 100 days to live.
Dang.
And so he was like, man, I got to reprioritize like right now, my life, my values, like being with family. So I think, I don't know, the point of sharing that was like, and then after getting my Dutch test, I realized like my travel schedule always being gone, going to Toronto like every other week, like that impacted my health in a negative way. So this may sound like one of these things like, oh, I'll get to my sleep later. Like that's something I'm going to work on later in life. I'm in the hustle right now. I'm like building a business or I'm building a practice, but it's like, we really got to prioritize this now because it's real stuff.
And I might have said it even on the last YouTube that we did together. You'll see it, the slogan all the time, right? It's about hustling, right? Girl boss hustling, keep on hustling, working on my hustle, and they have coffee cups with hustle. I'm like, stop hustling. Stop hustling. I get it in the short term or when you need to, or just don't forget to take the self-care. Because if you forget the self-care because you're hustling till 1 a.m. on your computer with all that fake blue light coming in, not sleeping well, and then you are wired all through the night, don't sleep, get up the next day, it's just so detrimental.
Yeah. You're just robbing Peter to pay Paul, and eventually something's going to give. And that something could be like catastrophic, like cancer.
Exactly. People think crashing, like, oh, I'm young, I can handle it. I'll just crash later. I'm like, well, it could be the other C word. Like it could be, cancer, just like you said. It could be a really bad thing that happens.
It's crazy. All right, so let's get to that, and we'll talk about my test. I think it was an eye-opener, really an eye-opener for me. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have you. And you wrote in the bottom, like, P.S. Mike, are you taking care of yourself? I'm like, shit, I'm not. Like I am. I eat all this healthy food, but then, I was like going to different time zones all the time, and I know you travel too. So, but let's hold that thought. I think we didn't totally finish up the thyroid stuff. So, so someone has a lot of reverse T3 and all that. Like where do we start with that?
The basics. You start with the basics because you have to. It's not the thyroid's fault. The thyroid is merely reacting to everything you're doing or not doing. So if you're high stress, high inflamed, because of maybe it's like stuff you're eating, or you've got infection, viruses, gut infections, exposures, heavy metals, the stuff in your environment, all of that is just seeping into your body and directly affecting the thyroid. So I understand doing T3 or giving supplements to support T4 to T3 conversion, like selenium is popular, zinc is popular, iodine is popular. I get it, but if you don't back up at the same time and address the cause, then you're going to feel better for a while and then feel worse again. And how many thyroid patients say that? I started thyroid medication, I felt great, and now I feel bad again. So they want more, right? They want to up their dose, and that's not the problem. The problem is they didn't backtrack. Nobody backtracked with them to look at the big picture. And what's the problem or side effect of upping the dose continually like that? Because that does happen a lot. It does happen a lot, absolutely. Yeah. And so what happens is, just like you were saying earlier, if they're just given T4 and it can't make T3, then it just builds up. Or you could end up pushing somebody into hyperthyroidism, which is the opposite of hypothyroidism. And now you're running too fast and you're speeding things up too much, and it's hard on the heart and it's hard on other things. You need to be careful. And then the feedback loops within the adrenals, we talked about that a little bit last time. What's the thyroid and adrenal? So what happens? So how does,
abnormal levels of thyroid affect adrenal output?
Yeah, it slows it down actually. Okay. So it'll slow it down and it'll slow in the metabolism of cortisol. So like the thyroid affects metabolism of you, right? Everything, right? Everything. Your hair, how does your hair grow? Your digestion, how fast does your stool move through? Your skin turnover, like all this stuff. So when the thyroid slows down, everything slows down. The cortisol, when it goes through the liver to get processed, will slow down. And so what happens on a Dutch test is you'll get this really low level of metabolized cortisol because the thyroid is directly just slowed everything down. It's taken the dial and just turned it way, way down. So people freak out and go, oh, I have I have an adrenal problem. I have to do all this stimulatory cortisol stuff. I'm like, no, actually, you have a thyroid problem that's manifesting into the adrenals. You can address both at the same time, but really you actually have to step back even further and find out why. Why are you endocrinely unbalanced? What's going on for you? That's key. And that's where the Dutch test comes in, because if you were to do a one spot salivary cortisol test, you may not see that. Even a blood draw. A lot of people will go to their doctor and they'll get like a morning cortisol drawn, and sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low, maybe it's normal, but that's just one spot out of your whole, the most of your day, your 12 hours. You miss stuff. Crazy. Yeah. That's why I love this test. It's really cool we're having this conversation. And it's hard for people to hear to go to the basics. How many people say, well, what supplement do I take for that? What can I take for that? I get so many DMs on Instagram that say, I have a thyroid problem, what supplement would you recommend? I'm like, or I have an adrenal problem, what are your most favorite adrenal products? Like, well, I can tell you my most favorite adrenal products, but I don't know if it's your case, and I don't know what your cause is. Right. I'm not joking when I say you have to go back to the basics. Yeah, it's that individual, and it's that whole thing of precision medicine, like trying to figure out what works for you and all that. Yep. Cool. All right. Well, that's really good. So we talked about leptin and inflammation. Last time, we didn't really get into it, but this whole field of meta-inflammation and immunometabolism. So just for folks listening, Alina Guggenheim, do you know her? She's in Portland. So she's a smart chick. Yeah. So we talked all about like leptin and how it affects the Treg cells. And then so this comes full circle, right? Like how we talked about the thyroid being out of whack, and if you don't have these Treg cells, then you can't really police your inflammatory immune cells. And leptin suppresses those policemen. So anyway, crazy information. So if you guys want to learn more about immunometabolism, we'll talk about that with Alina. And she's good. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a really good combo. All right, so going back to circadian biology. So you travel all the time, like you were in Sweden or something? Yeah, all through Scandinavia in October. Yeah, when you were doing this test, having come back from Canada, I think I was in Scandinavia. Right. Yeah. So what do? I mean, you're going, let's say, like going from at least 3 different time zones, like to East Coast or internationally, What do you do? So I sleep on the plane. Thank goodness I'm like a little kid in a car. When I get on the plane, as long as I have a window seat, I can sleep 4 to sometimes 8 hours the whole trip. So then I wake pretty refreshed. I do take melatonin. I take cortisol calming stuff with me. I take L-theanine, which is a sort of anti-anxiety, calms the brain on fire type thing. I stay awake the day that I land and try to sleep, and then go to bed at their nighttime as opposed to, I'm so tired, I want to go to bed at my nighttime. Yeah. And so I try, and I give myself time. I try to buffer in personal days and, try not to be so crazy when I'm there. So like when I was in Scandinavia, I was in Copenhagen I think I landed on a Thursday. I had Friday off. I lectured Saturday and Sunday, and then I had Monday off. So I just had enough before I moved on to Norway and lectured there. But I just buffered in enough time where I could have some downtime and really not get out of bed if I didn't want to. Yeah, I could just work in bed and make tea and adapt, hang out. How do you feel that like getting natural sunlight, like when you arrive to that location? Yes. Is that a big input in this? So it helps that I love architecture and history, and I love to shop. So, and a lot of these European countries, actually a lot of countries, have great outdoor, no car streets. And so usually where I'm staying is pretty close. And I'll land, drop my stuff, and I usually need to eat, and so I will go shopping, and I will go sightseeing and be outside as much as I can the first day. Interesting. Yeah. That's so cool. That research is coming out more and more about like just bright sun exposure, or even if it's cloudy, like just that hitting your retina really kind of entrains the whole hormonal circadian clock. And that's what I tell people when I see it come back on the Dutch test, especially when they live by us, right, the Pacific Northwest, where it's other than from July 5th to August 5th, it's not really that sunny around here. So I tell people, go buy full spectrum light bulbs. Go get the box that they can turn on and have on their desk. Use the light alarm clock that can wake them up. And it's not the sun, but it is helpful to get that full brightness. Because what happens is people stay in their dark room and they hit snooze, or they get on their phone, and they don't get any light exposure, and then they go to their kitchen or they get ready and they go to the bathroom, and it's all sort of either dim light or it's artificial light. I'm like, no, throw open the blinds and get this full spectrum light exposure.
Yeah.
Especially first thing in the morning, within the first hour.
Right.
Yeah.
So smart.
In the first hour.
It's funny, and our ancestors didn't really have to think about doing this, right? I noticed, so my chickens, I can't sleep in because our rooster and all that sort of stuff, he's going nuts at 7 a.m. So it's even if I wanted to sleep in, and so I have to go let him out of the coop and stuff. So it's being closer, these fixes are so simple, and then as close as we can get to our ancestors, it makes it so easy just to align our biology with nature. So, but
it is hard to think about. I was talking to, do you know Angela Heap? She's a fertility nutritionist on Instagram. Anyways, she's in London, and she lost her power the other day, and we were to have a Skype talk. So we're Skyping, and she's doing it by candlelight, and it was, I want to say it was 5 in the afternoon, or 6 in the afternoon her time. So it was dark outside, and she has all these candles on. She goes, "What did they do back in the day?" I said, "They went to bed at 4, I guess."
Right.
I know.
It's wild.
Yeah, in the winter, because that's what we would do. I guess we would just burn a candle and eventually just go to bed at 5.
Right. Or use other tiki type torches, fireplaces. Yeah. My mother-in-law is from the UK, from London, and so another thing that they didn't have growing up is a heater. So they would have this, in downtown London, this central tube in the house, and there was mineral oil in there. And so if your room was away from the central heating, I don't know what the name for this, it's an old school furnace, right? But it would just burn in this low heat, and so they were always cold. So it's kind of interesting, growing up, she remembers, I was always freezing, bundled up. And so I asked her, I'm like, well, how do you think that affected your resilience and your toughness? Because she's a strong, hardy woman. She's like, oh, it's great. These kids nowadays, they can't handle this sort of stuff. So
these kids.
That's kind of, since we last spoke, this whole, biology of thermal stress has emerged, and Wim Hof and all that.
Yeah.
How does this tie into the endocrine system?
Definitely. I was looking up the BAT, the brown adipose tissue, the other day, and its relationship to thyroid and norepinephrine. And so it turns out that you have mitochondria in your brown fat, and you have the ability to convert T4 into T3. And so if you have all of the systemic stuff that will stop that conversion, stress, poor sleep, inflammation, all the things we're talking about, and you don't have enough norepinephrine, you're not going to be able to utilize your brown fat for heat or for fat thermogenesis. And I thought, wow, that's really neat that you can be deficient in your thyroid, deficient in norepinephrine, and it completely affects brown fat as well as white fat, but you just won't generate heat. And how many hypothyroid people who also feel adrenal fatigue are cold all the time?
Yeah, hear it all the time.
All the time. My hands are cold, my feet are cold, I'm always cold. I'm the person with the jacket. You hear this from your hypothyroid friends. It's because they can't get the thermogenesis from their brown fat. I was like, that's so neat. Sorry, but that's so neat.
Yeah, now that you know the biology of it.
Right.
And it's interesting. So brown fat obviously has a huge metabolic role and insulin sensitizing effect. So it's they're cold. That's one symptom. But on the back end, there's all this metabolic derangement.
You lose
so it's
all
this.
That.
So walk us through again, just quickly, the norepinephrine. How does that affect?
Norepinephrine. Okay, wait. Now I have to remember this.
Or how does it get dysfunctional?
Norepinephrine?
Yeah.
Oh, so if you're missing the communication from the brain to the adrenals. So similar to cortisol over time, if the brain is down-regulating the adrenal output, then you're going to maybe lose cortisol, and you'll also lose norepinephrine, epinephrine as well. So it can be that. And
then that slows down. Norepinephrine is key for the brown adipose tissue to generate the heat.
Yes.
So that's, so that brain to adrenal.
Yeah, because it's your mitochondria. It's the UCPs, the uncoupling proteins in your mitochondria that generate heat. So you have the fifth complex that makes ATP, and then you have UCPs that make heat. And so if you have busted mitochondria, if you don't have very healthy mitochondria, and you're missing norepinephrine, and you have a thyroid problem, high insulin, weight gain, cold all the time, tired.
Great point. Gosh. All right. So I got something totally off topic, but now you brought it up. I've been thinking about this a long time.
Okay.
So everyone's hot about keto right now, the ketogenic diet. You know, I've been covering a lot on the podcast for a couple of years after, working with Alessandro. You mentioned something right there, like cell membranes, mitochondrial function, complex 5. I have this theory that one of the ways that keto is very helpful is by just having more healthy fat. So therefore, like your cell membranes are more fluid and so forth versus, because a lot of people, they go from junk food to keto and they lose weight and they feel good, but sometimes their fat quality is not that great. But I'm thinking like, could it just be that the butter in that is affecting the composition of the...
Yeah.
Have you thought?
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't seen it. I haven't looked enough into it, especially just with the testing that I do to sort of put that together. But I think that's totally plausible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense for different people.
Especially because the mitochondria are king for purinergic signaling. Do you know purinergic, which is the signaling, the ATP out of your mitochondria is one, and then ATP breaks down to adenosine, and both of those can locally affect glands. So you can get cortisol production because your brain said so, but you can actually get cortisol production because your mitochondria said so, right there in the adrenal gland. And if you don't have healthy mitochondria, you're going to miss out on that purinergic signaling. And purinergic signaling affects your thyroid because it's right there in the thyroid gland. It affects your testosterone production. It's right there in the testes. It affects the way women ovulate or make progesterone or estrogen. It's right there in the ovaries. And it's all about the mitochondria.
Wow.
For local signaling.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so I have read some research on one of the mechanisms through which ketogenic diets affect seizures is through adenosine metabolism in the brain. But isn't adenosine like reversed? Like you want it low in the brain, high peripherally or something?
Yes. So as I was reading more of what adenosine does, I was like, oh, it's more of your like rest and digest in the periphery. It's very calming. It's anti-cortisol. It helps with ovulation. So it does all of those repair healthy things that we want. Whereas ATP is a lot more give energy, go, fight or flight, which we need both, right? It's a balance. And in the brain, I actually don't know in the brain. I just know because I was looking at peripheral stuff when it came to endocrine.
I thought I could be wrong. I thought it was the flip, kind of like AMPK in the brain is you want it lower in the brain but higher in the periphery or something. Okay. I don't know. I could be wrong
look
here.
It up.
Yeah,
that'll be part 3.
But I could never really understand what adenosine was doing in the body. But it sounds to me it's really tied to mitochondrial function.
It is, yeah, absolutely, right? Because it comes right. ATP breaks down, and adenosine is one of the things it breaks down too.
And then how does coffee weave into that equation?
Coffee is an anti-adenosine, so it's more like ATP, which is why coffee is so stimulatory for so many things. Whereas adenosine, basically, for a simple analogy, shuts down cortisol, brings it down. ATP brings it up, and coffee is more like ATP. It can bring it up. So
it will free up adenosine?
No, anti-adenosine.
So it's an agonist.
Yes.
Antagonist.
Antagonist.
Got it.
Antagonist.
One thing I haven't been able to find research on is that caffeine stimulates cortisol. Does it really?
We see it all the time in the lab.
Okay.
Yeah, because people will write on their requisition form, like, oh, I had coffee at this time, and then we see the cortisol spike.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now that we're testing the neurotransmitter metabolites, VMA, which is the norepinephrine and epinephrine metabolite. While they're not, I get people have some different opinions on on neurotransmitter testing. This is the organic acid part of it. But it's definitely in the research to show that caffeine drinks, it doesn't have to be coffee, it can be Monsters and stuff like that. Totally will absolutely stimulate norepinephrine, epinephrine, and cortisol.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I just haven't found any double-blind, like placebo-controlled trials on it. Maybe it's an old school research and then we just piggyback off that, but I've been trying to look for that. But now that I totally believe...
I think, though, it depends on your kind of caffeine. This is my own sort of personal soapbox. I don't drink coffee, I drink green tea, but there's also benefits to coffee, too. Yeah. And there's great benefits to green tea. So if I drink green tea that has caffeine in it, do I feel that my cortisol and norepinephrine go up? Do I feel in fight or flight? Not in a cup, no. And I know I'm getting the green tea benefits. But if it's a tough morning and I need 3 cups of green tea, you better believe I'm jittery.
Yeah.
You better believe I can feel my heart racing. So I'm sure there's some adaptation there as well. But I think everyone's different. And I think if I drank an energy drink that you would get at a gas station or something, I would be on the ceiling.
Yeah, that'd be too much for me.
That'd be way too much for me.
Yeah. I think those are too much for anyone. People that go down that pre-workout route, like they just burn themselves out. I feel like in caffeine, I feel like there is this adaptation phase where, like, with wine, if you drink wine all the time, like 3 glasses, you're like, that's like, you can still drive. And same with caffeine. So, your tolerance increases, and then that leads to other issues, sleep issues and all that. So I think do more with less has been my philosophy.
Agreed. I mean, people will ask, should I go off my caffeine? I'm like, well, it depends what kind of caffeine you do. If you just have a cup of coffee in the morning because you like the taste and you feel good, keep it.
Yeah.
Unless you know for a fact it's detrimental for me. When people go, when I drink coffee, my heart races. I'm like,
probably not a good idea.
Probably listen to your body.
So funny. So do you drink green tea more for the health benefits?
Yes. Yeah. I like the taste, and I'm a tea drinker. I was raised a tea drinker. My mom is a tea drinker. My dad is now. So that's just always been my go-to, green tea. Mm-hmm.
You just go to Whole Foods, buy the organic sencha or whatever, and
I have sencha or matcha, and
yeah.
And I have a matcha mushroom blend now.
Oh yeah.
I have a whole cabinet, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to.
That's awesome.
On tea. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you know Jeff Grimm?
Yeah, I went to his compounding pharmacy conference that he did about 2 months ago.
Okay.
And it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a big green tea guy too. He goes way down the rabbit hole of like the hand rolled stuff and
no.
There's it's like beer, craft beer. Like you can really go into it, or like with wine.
Yeah, that's cool. In Japan we went and had, like real matcha, and I went to like matcha places and stuff because it's so popular in Japan, but it's getting way more popular here.
Totally.
Yeah.
How do they make it?
So it was great. I mean, it's just like you see on the YouTube videos and stuff. They have the matcha powder that they put in. They have their whisks, and despite the fact that I have a whisk and I have the matcha cup and I do it like they do it, my matcha doesn't look or taste like theirs. Theirs tastes better. Huh. It's kind of like Thai or Indian food. When they make it, it's way better than when I make it.
Yeah, I know that. Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's just more complex when they make it?
I think so. Or something. They have a secret
deal.
Unicorn dust they put in there, and I just don't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's maybe the quality or how
It could be that too. Yeah. Actual real organic Japanese matcha as opposed to maybe something from here. I'm not sure.
Could be. Well, it's like you've probably heard about the honey right now, where some of our honey is being spiked from fake stuff from China, and there's some documentary on. Sam, you were telling me about the honey. Or there's my brother was. There's a lot of people that have been talking about it. Yeah. Anyway, you've heard about that too?
Yes,
so maybe
I
the
have
green
heard.
tea thing.
It could be. It could be. My neighbors raise bees.
Oh, cool.
Which is really cool.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
I think we all should. They're just getting hammered with all the stuff.
Oh my gosh. Did you read that article in the paper of the bees? That somebody came and trashed all of the beehives?
No.
Like an actual, I want to say burglar, but I don't know that's what you call it if you smash beehives. Somebody came and just like demolished all these beehives. And
why would they?
I don't know.
It's like
just to be a punk kid? I don't know.
Yeah, that is not good. That's really, really scary. I tried the beehive thing in the backyard, but you have to have water underneath it. I guess they like to get into the mud and stuff. And I can do the chickens, I can do the garden and compost, but I got to learn a little bit more about it.
Get more of these.
Yeah, we all.
Have your neighbor do them. Let somebody else.
Deal with it.
And then get the honey.
Too funny. So let's kind of finish off with testing and the differences here with. You mentioned it a little bit, like if you're just doing serum blood work, like on hormones or anything, you're getting a one snapshot of like this whole complex ebb and flow of what's going on. So for folks that are not familiar with like the Dutch test and the premise behind that, let's lay the land with that. I think it's a good start.
Absolutely. So one thing I always say, Dutch is an acronym. So we don't test for Dutch ancestry. It does stand for Dried Urine Test for Comprehensive Hormones. And basically, it's where you urinate on a piece of filter paper, a different piece, 4 times through the day to get your circadian rhythm plus all of your hormones. Now you can take it one step further. You do all the urinary testing, and you can do like what you did, which is called the cortisol awakening response, which is where you do saliva cotton swabs that you suck on right first thing in the morning, 30 minutes later, at 60 minutes, and then around dinner and before bed to hyper focus in on that morning response. But the point of the urine is you get much more detail out of it. You get your estrogen phase 1 and phase 2 detox. You get the way your testosterone breaks down in your body. You can catch things like your melatonin through the night. You can get cortisol in the night. You can get metabolized. How's your cortisol being metabolized? Is it staying as cortisol, or is it keeping as cortisone, which is inactive? And because it's urine, you catch all this information. You can't get that out of blood or saliva for the most part.
So the interpretation is a little bit more complex.
Absolutely.
But you get a lot more specific lifestyle change ideas.
Absolutely.
Remedies like how you can fix things versus oh, you're fatigued. Well, then now what? Like you have all the different, remedies there.
Yeah.
And that element of circadian biology, that's what a cortisol awakening response. That's new. I think you launched it over the summer.
We did. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. It's been around it's been obviously around forever. Humans have it, but it's gaining a lot more popularity. And we decided wow, this is a really important part of adrenal testing. We need to add it on and see what's going on. So for people who don't know, the cortisol awakening response, it's your ability of your brain to tell your adrenals, you have to make cortisol first thing in the morning. It has to spike up. And then it spikes up and then it gradually falls through the rest of your day. And so some people do it really well. Some people don't do it that well at all. Yeah. Some people overshoot the moon. And so the cortisol awakening response, your rise and fall, that mountain that happens, is super important for things like your blood sugar, setting your blood sugar for the day, inflammatory response. It's the morning part of your circadian rhythm, and it helps tell your thymus gland to kill cells tagged as autoimmune. So what happens is your body, you make cells, and before they get sent out to circulate in your body, your thymus gland literally goes down every one and says, are you autoimmune? Are you autoimmune? Are you autoimmune? And if it is autoimmune, it pulls it aside, simple analogy, and then it gets destroyed because you don't want autoimmune cells that you've created sent out. If you don't get the spike, if you don't get that cortisol awakening response, then that little autoimmune cell sneaks out. It doesn't get killed. And so many people say, I have really bad autoimmune symptoms in the morning. They're missing the spike most likely. Or they'll say, I was doing really well, but I've had a lot of stress, I'm not sleeping well, I've had all these things, and I feel very autoimmune. And I'll say, well, let's do your test and we'll find they have a flatline cortisol awakening response. They don't mountain. They kind of do that. They just flatline.
Wow, gosh, that is...
I know. Heather Zawicki, which you've had on, Dr. Heather Zawicki taught me that in an autoimmune conference. And I was like, oh, that's huge. So many people say, I wake with autoimmune symptoms.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, so that's so interesting. I mean, the circadian biology of the immune system, the immune cells are really active at night and so forth. And so, I've read some of that research on scleroderma and lupus and all that. And symptoms are a lot worse in the morning, but I had no idea about that relationship with cortisol, which is mind blowing.
It was the whole, that right there made the whole conference. I'm like, well, I just paid for that one line.
It's amazing.
Just made the conference. Thank you, Dr. Zawicki.
Yeah. And so that really kind of ups the ante for me in terms of wanting to make sure that I get that proper, because we tend to say cortisol is bad, it's fattening and it's made in fat tissue, but you're highlighting one of its main benefits.
Helpful.
Affecting the immune system.
Between that and the blood sugar, you need healthy levels of cortisol. Yeah.
All right. So assuming someone does the CAR test through Dutch Precision Analytics and finds out that they're not making enough cortisol in the morning, where do we start?
Sunlight is the very first thing. It's what I was saying earlier, what you were saying earlier. If you want to force the spike, then as soon as you wake up, as soon as your eyes open up, you've got to get that full spectrum light in to retrain your brain up in the morning. We're going to do this. We're going to make a mountain in the morning and get this going. Yeah. So get the alarm clock that's light-based, get a light, full spectrum light box you can put on your counter. But you have to have exposure to it. People will often, they'll put it over there, but they'll be over there.
They're doing laundry.
Yeah, they're going through all the different rooms of the house. I'm like, no, you have to take it with you. Yeah. Or just open the curtains, go outside, go on your deck, and get 5 or 10 minutes right first thing of some sunlight exposure. The other thing you can do is some quick exercise. Do a little bit of high intensity, some HIIT training, 5 or 10 minutes. I'm not asking for an hour. Yeah. Just a little bit, just to improve that communication from your brain to your adrenals. Let's get a little vigorous and get this going.
And you've been doing that yourself. I know you do a lot of HIIT training in the morning.
I do. Yeah, I've been switching a little more to resistance training lately, which I think I need. I was doing too much HIIT training. I was feeling a little burned out, for lack of a better word. Yeah. And I'm liking the resistance training where I'm at right now. But I work out first thing in the morning.
Cool. Yeah. Fasted, green tea,
fasted,
off, you're going.
And I feel amazing.
Yeah. What was that HIIT training? Was that CrossFit or was that cycling?
I did not do CrossFit. No, it was. It was a lot of home stuff. So it was kettlebells, jump rope, TRX, and we have a punching bag. And so it was. And I set my little timer for 30 seconds on, 10 seconds off, or 40 on, 20 off, or whatever I was doing, and then I would do my rounds as fast as possible.
Yeah, punching bag. It's amazing how much effort you can exert and you get winded, right?
Gosh, I love the punching bag though. Man, you can get a lot of aggression out in that.
Right.
Yeah, between kicking and punching. Yeah, my husband bought me my own gloves. I have my own real gloves, and I have wraps, and it's hanging in our garage, and I go out there. Awesome. I still go out there, not as much as I used to with doing more resistance weight training, lifting, but it's definitely, man, it's a great stress reliever.
Yeah. Do you have the speed bag too, or just?
We don't have the speed bag. Okay. We just have the heavy bag. And thankfully, a lot of gyms will have heavy bags and all the sand has settled. So they're rocks. Have you ever noticed that? They're like cement. And so ours is only a 40 or 50 pound bag to try to avoid that.
Yeah, because then it makes it kind of hard, like you're punching someone. It
hurts, yeah. And ours is weighted from the bottom too, because sometimes you punch them and they swing away from you. Yeah. And then they swing back and it's annoying. So ours does have the weight, so it doesn't swing away.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Now, so you said you kind of shifted your exercise routine a little bit.
Yes.
Is that just something with age? And I know, like, just talking with Deanna, when she hit 40, she was like, I cut back on cardio and emphasized weights more. Was that for you, like something?
I think so. I mean, I feel pretty. I mean, not perfect, but I feel rather in touch with what's going on with my body. And I think when I started to say to myself, I'm not really enjoying this hit. I feel more tired, or I felt it wasn't working, or I just intuitively, I was like, I don't really like this anymore. As much as I love kettlebells, TRX, punching bag stuff, I thought, I'm gonna switch gears and see what I think. So for the last 3.5 weeks, I've done mostly just resistance training, and so not fast-paced, not, as fast as I can go, not jumping from one to the next, more, and I really like it. I think I just needed a break. I needed to change. I needed to shift.
Cool.
And I still don't hardly do. I used to do a lot of cardio. I used to totally be cardio queen. That's usually where I think. It's where I unwind my brain, is when I'm on the treadmill or somewhere. But now I don't hardly do cardio anymore.
Right.
Other than hiking and walking, stuff like that.
Totally. Yeah, which is just part of everyday movement. Everyone, I think, should be doing some level of that. Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's good. And you know what? Maybe in the summer or spring, you'll go back to, hit it. I mean, it could be.
It's always evolving, right?
Yeah.
The human body. And we evolved with seasons and what's stress and travel and what we can handle.
Yeah.
How much is in my bucket? My bucket was too filled up, and I had to switch.
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah, I've been getting back into yoga. I started doing yoga a long time ago.
I should do
in the
that
winter, it's great, because it's like it's really hot in there, and like you can get into a flow state with all the different people doing the poses. So vinyasa or power, just depending upon the day.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
I've been doing more stretching, and when I'm stretching, I think every morning I should really just get into yoga.
Yeah.
And I haven't yet.
It forces you to. It pushes you a little bit more than you'll do at home by yourself.
Oh, I totally. Yeah. It's on the list.
Yeah, so many things we could do.
So many things.
Okay, so part of the CAR test and the new Dutch Plus is looking at estrogen breakdown.
Yes.
And so the catechol, estrogen, quinone. So let's talk about the 4-hydroxy. Is it methoxy or hydroxy?
Hydroxy.
Hydroxy.
Yeah, that's phase 1.
Because that's a key. A lot of people, like, we hear about estrogen sensitive cancers and all that, breast and prostate and so forth.
Yeah.
But a lot of people aren't in tune with this metabolite of estrogen and what it does.
Right. So, and everyone thinks, estrogen's bad, and it's really just a balance. And it depends where estrogen is going when it gets broken down in the liver and other places. So estrogen, when it gets broken down, the first thing it does is go through phase 1. You can go through a 2 pathway, a 4 pathway, or a 16 pathway. And so the 4 pathway, which you were saying, is 4-OH or 4-hydroxy. You'll see it on lab work. And so what happens is the 4-OH, if it doesn't go through phase 2, which is a neutralizer, if it turns and goes down that quinone pathway, quinone with a Q, then it forms what's called an adduct. And adducts will bind to and break off of DNA. And now your DNA goes, oh crap, I have holes. I don't want holes. So your DNA repair system comes in and repairs the hole, and you move on. The problem is if you have too many adducts causing too many holes and not enough repair system, or the repair system's having to up its game and it's moving as quickly as possible, and what happens when you move quickly? You lose form. And so mutation is possible. And now you have DNA that's trying to be repaired, but they inserted the wrong repair, and now you have estrogen-sensitive breast cancer because the wrong repair was done. All because you went down this wrong pathway.
And weren't clearing up.
And weren't clearing out, through phase 2 detox.
Yeah, gosh, that is so wild.
And there are 2 stopgaps. I'm sure there are more, but right now science says we have 2 enzymes made by 2 SNPs. One is quinone reductase, which is what sulforaphane, right, works so well on broccoli sprout powder. And the other one is GST, which is glutathione. So the body's trying. The body has some stopgap enzymes to try to protect you, but If you have a quinone reductase problem or if you have a glutathione problem, then it just keeps going down the naughty pathway and makes potential risk for cancer.
Right.
Yeah.
Potential meaning like your DNA does have that like p53 and tumor suppressor
Yes.
protein. So
Yep.
it's constantly trying to figure out if there is a mutation.
Right.
And then to cleave that out or cause cell death and so forth. But sometimes that gets missed. Like you said, if there's a lot of damage.
Yep.
So you add that on with leaky gut, with poor stress management, and then pretty soon we can have an issue there.
Absolutely. And people will say, they'll go, oh my gosh, I have the 4. Does that mean I'm getting cancer? I'm like, hold on. No, it just means you have an increased risk. But we have to take care of a lot of things first.
Yeah, really good point.
Yeah.
Quinone reductase. I mean, a lot of people know glutathione and they know like pathways like that, but quinone, like that sounds a little scary and stuff. But it's so funny, like how it's this inducible enzyme. And you mentioned sulforaphane.
Which you taught me all about, and now I'm obsessed with, and teach everyone else about.
On
so
the
thanks.
on the sulforaphane
the
stuff?
sulforaphane, yeah.
Well, it's so crazy.
Yeah.
So I remember reading some research from Johns Hopkins, and they had women that were getting a reduction in mammoplasty, and they ingested sulforaphane before the procedure, removed the breast tissue, stained it in the lab, and the quinone reductase and heme oxygenase, which is another related enzyme, were upregulated over 200%.
It's amazing.
Like just like a little oral sulforaphane from broccoli seed.
I take it every day.
Yeah.
Almost, if I remember. Yeah.
It's key. It's awesome. Any other tools in the tool bag for that 4-hydroxy metabolite?
Try to get it through phase 2. So if you are not moving through phase 2, which is regulated by the COMT enzyme, which of course is COMT. So the COMT SNP makes the COMT enzyme that helps phase 2. So if you have any problem on that methionine pathway, so where homocysteine comes around to methionine, methionine makes SAM, and then SAM gives away its M, comes back as SAH or SAW. Anyway, that whole pathway, if that doesn't work somewhere, you're going to have problems with your estrogen detox. So if you have B12 issues, if you have trimethylglycine issues, if you have choline issues, if you can't make enough SAM, if you have SNPs and mutations, then you could really have, it may have nothing to do with quinone reductase, but everything to do with you just can't get through phase 2.
So methylation is really a big deal.
Methylation is huge, and everyone assumes methylation's MTHFR. I'm like, no. MTHFR is good, but it's the active methylation. It's going through phase 2 methylation. Yeah.
Interesting. If we go back at like the root cause of all this, right? So people are having hormone issues, methylation issues. Does it come back to part of it like diet? Like people are just not getting enough green leafy vegetables?
Honestly, I think it's diet and exposure. I was reading this great article for this thyroid lecture I was doing, and it was talking about men and their testosterone levels, and it was saying how the environmental endocrine disruptors are the highest they've ever been, and it's the exposure is astronomical, and it's one of the big, it's like the big reason from this author that men's testosterone is so low. But he goes on to say, like, he thinks these endocrine disruptors have really just played key catastrophic roles because they get into our food system, right? Think of things like glyphosate and pesticides and herbicides, and we think maybe in our garden, but you're eating it. You eat a sprayed apple, you eat a sprayed strawberry, you eat a sprayed broccoli sprout. You think you're getting sulforaphane, but you're also eating the pesticide with it, and so it's all tied into each other. Absolutely.
So maybe because it's in our environment, the pool of estrogens that we're exposed to is just raised.
Yeah, either externally and then in our own body. Yeah.
Yeah, that is crazy.
It's super crazy.
Yeah. So detox is not like this optional thing that maybe once a year we always have to think about detox.
Yes, right? And it used to be, back years ago. I graduated from naturopathic medical school in 2005, and back then, we learned a lot about detox, and my functional medicine practitioner friends, maybe who were not NDs, would say, that seems kind of weird. You naturopaths are kind of weird with detox. And now everyone says, we talk about detox pathways, and we talk about detox genetics, and we talk about detox foods. And I mean, now it's like, wow, we're pretty toxic people. The earth is not happy. And we have to be consciously aware. And I don't mean you have to go on a detox, like go on a detox, just what you eat and what you choose to bring in your house and how you sleep and how you breathe. And like that all affects your detox pathways. And it's important.
And most importantly, like your exposure.
Yes.
That's a key thing. Like, I mean, detox and upregulating those pathways are key, but I realized like, well, the air in your home, the water, the food, the bedding. We got rid of our couch because, a lot of couches and bedding have those flame retardants.
The flame retardant, yeah.
And those are really persistent in the environment and take a long time to break down. So this may sound a little like, oh my gosh, they're getting a little out there with all this stuff, but this is real.
This is the basics now,
Yeah,
right? This used to be the woo-woo, like, ooh, detox, and now we include it as part of our basic, what do you do every day?
Yeah.
You do those things, the sleep, the water, the air, the diet, because for these reasons, everything we talked about. Keep your thyroid healthy, keep your mitochondria healthy, keep your endocrine system healthy, keep your liver healthy. Absolutely. And that's not even if you choose to partake in things like alcohol, you know, like other things. Yeah. That might just get in the way even more.
Alcohol.
Yeah,
and then
it's just the basics.
Yeah, totally. And then the whole opioid thing that's going around.
How
does that affect the endocrine system?
It shuts it down.
Yeah.
Shuts it down. I had a practitioner who I was consulting on a case with, and all of it was a male. All of his male hormones were very, very low, and all of his cortisols were very, very low. And the practitioner said, "What do you think's going on with him?" I said, "Why don't you call him and see if he's taking anything?" Sure enough, he was taking recreational opioids. Recreational. Like, okay, sure. And he was taking it enough, it was suppressing the entire endocrine system. Wow. And he was just doing it sporadically. Think of the people who take it every day.
For like chronic pain or whatever.
For real chronic pain. Yeah. It's completely suppressing their system. And women, it does the same for women. It'll shut down ovulation, it'll shut down progesterone, it'll shut down estrogen, it'll shut down cortisol. Yeah. Yeah.
And so are the fixes kind of the same? Obviously, get off the drugs and then sunlight, circadian rhythms, etc.
And it will rebound, thankfully. Thankfully, opioids I have found not to be permanent. But it just takes longer if you've had an opioid problem for a while. Yeah. It's going to take a while to come back, but it generally does come back.
Right. Interesting. What else has kind of emerged since we spoke last is the SARM, selective androgen receptor modulators. A lot of people, even in our space, are promoting them as like safer alternatives to steroids and this and that. I think it's totally crazy. Yes, yeah. So have you seen any patients come in that have taken SARMs?
Not on, but I've actually had a few practitioners ask me if I knew of natural anti-SARMs. Like, no, not that. Yeah. Yeah, so they were trying to counter them. Yeah. But no, I have not seen that yet come through on the Dutch test. Okay. I see, now I'm seeing a lot more THC come through and CBD. Oh. Now CBD is one thing and then THC is another thing, but people used to be afraid to write any of that down, and now that a lot more states have it legal, they will write down that they do it recreationally or every day, or they'll write, when they did it, they'll have, THC, something with THC in it, and then they'll do a Dutch collection. And so, it's interesting. So research on THC, and this is THC, not CBD, but THC is mixed because they classify short-term and long-term a little bit differently than we might at the lab. So they may say THC exposure for a week or 3 weeks is considered long-term because that's all the study went. And we're like, well, actually, most people who do THC have been doing it for a while. Yeah, a lot longer than 3 weeks, unless they tried it once and that's as good as it got. So it's upregulating at first. It drives cortisol up often at first, and then over time it seems to have this suppressive effect on cortisol. The sex hormones are a little mixed. I read different studies on testosterone and on estrogen, and I think it depends on dose, and I think it depends on length of time. And I think it depends on the percent of THC and whatever they're doing. Because it used to be people just smoked it. Yeah. And now they're eating it and they have, gels and shatters and oils and tinctures and you can really vary that THC percentage and the way it gets into your body, either your inhalation or fat soluble gel or tincture and oil is very different. Yeah. And so I think a lot more cool research is going to come out of it.
And so what's your general stance on that?
On THC?
I mean, it's not for me. I feel like it totally affects memory and, I think it affects acetylcholine metabolism within the hippocampus and all that. So,
and we see that too, right? With people who tend to do THC for a long time.
Yeah, memory.
Memory is usually the first thing their significant other or their friends complain about. Like, yeah, man, you can't remember anything.
Like, that can be good long term.
I don't think so either. I don't see how that's quickly regenerated over the long term.
Right. But if someone's trying to get their energy back and all that, and recreational use, would you say maybe like once a week only, or just try to minimize it?
Try to minimize it. Like opioids, I say obviously never. Like opioids are not a good thing recreationally. If you're going to pick something recreational, don't pick opioids. Yeah. But when it comes to THC, I'm like just because I don't see the sporadic affect the Dutch results as much. So if somebody says, I do THC like on the weekends or on a Friday night. I don't see that impact the Dutch results like I do with opioids.
Sure.
Who people say, yeah, I take a pain medication a couple times a week for whatever. And that I do see massive instant results.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And they're so addictive anyway. That's a scary road to go down.
Yeah. Now CBD, on the other hand, is different. CBD tends to be very good for the body. The endocannabinoid system seems to really benefit, and then that benefits the sex hormones and the cortisol. Especially high cortisol, anxious people. CBD can be really helpful on test work for them as well.
Yeah, that's good to know. All right, so we talked about metabolism of estrogens. Let's get into the organic acids. I think that's kind of an interesting pairing. You know, the VMA, you said an H, what's the other one?
We have HVA, which is dopamine, a dopamine metabolite. HVA, the norepinephrine, epinephrine metabolite. 5-HIAA, which is the serotonin metabolite. And then we have the B12, B6, and one of the glutathione markers.
Which one is that?
Pyroglutamate or pyroglutamic acid. Yeah.
Cool.
It's just one of them.
And so do you pair that data like in cross-reference with the urine stuff? So you get a really good snapshot, brain chemistry, or is that?
It's mixed. So it is mixed. Like for example, 5-HIAA serotonin. Well, 90% of serotonin is made in your gut. So most of the 5-HIAA that comes out is probably going to be gut related. But having been in practice as long as I have and gone through the actual neurotransmitter testing stuff, and we all know if your gut's not happy, your brain's not happy. So, and vice versa. If you're depressed here, you're depressed there.
Yeah.
So I tend to see it correlate really well in both areas often with people. Very, very rarely do people have a whole lot of gut unhappiness and it doesn't affect their mood in some way, or fatigue or something in some way. Yeah. So it's kind of a mix, brain and periphery.
Right.
Yeah.
But you kind of triangulate or there's a correlation there is what you're saying.
Yeah. I say, what are the symptoms? And sometimes it has nothing to do with the neurotransmitter itself. Like for example, to make serotonin, you need tryptophan. If you have a low protein diet, you're not going to make tryptophan. Therefore, you're not going to get it. You're not going to make serotonin. If you're estrogen dominant, you're not going to make very much serotonin. Estrogen dominance will divert away from making serotonin.
Interesting. The
counter to that, if you're low estrogen, so think your menopausal women, think women who don't get a menstrual cycle, they're amenorrheic. Low estrogen means you can't make 5-HTP. 5-HTP goes on to make serotonin. You can't win with estrogen.
Wow.
You need a healthy balance.
Tight balance. Wow.
Yeah, so it definitely affects. So it may have nothing to do with brain production, like you have a brain problem and everything, like, oh, crap, I have an estrogen problem and that's it. Or, oh, my patient only eats carbs. They're a carb vegan. Not to pick on vegans, but it's just the easiest example. Like this is what they eat. They have bagels and macaroni and cheese and noodles and bread and that's what they subsist on. And like, well,
scary.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not to change the topic too much, but yeah, I sometimes I'm just curious. I'll go to a vegan restaurant and have food, and there's not a lot of vegetables. There's a lot of like
beans?
Carbs. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I want to do a video on that actually. Anyway, that's crazy. So I think that really helps people better understand like serotonin metabolism and everything else. There's a strong hormonal influence there. So
huge. Even the B vitamins with detox. I mean, think about the getting through that methylation pathway, that methylation cycle. I mean, it uses B12, and so we test B12. And if your B12 is a problem, you might have estrogen detox problems. Among other things, B12 helps with memory and energy and all sorts of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I love about these tests, because some people think, oh, I'm kind of depressed, it could be low serotonin, so then they go buy 5-HTP.
Right.
And then they say, well, it didn't work for me, so the nutritional supplements suck, or whatever.
Right. No, it's true.
It's like, well, you're like taking one little small element in this, this whole network.
Yep.
Could be hormones, other things.
Co-nutrients and genetics, and absolutely.
That's awesome. So that new test that looks at the organic acids paired with the hormones, what's that called?
We have what's called the Dutch Complete, which is the all urine, and then we have the Dutch Plus, which is what you did. So it's a combination urine saliva.
Cool.
Yeah.
So it's in the Plus now.
We do.
Oh, awesome. So the test that I did like 4 or 5 months ago now, it would now have
January 2nd, 2018.
Oh, cool. I got to redo it.
It comes automatically.
Yeah. That's really good to know.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, you should. You're in a whole different place now. So
it would be. Yeah, I haven't been traveling as much, and my back was hurting. I did like threw out my back, and the like was really in kind of a weird spot that way. So anyway, I'd be very curious now to see how things are. One last thing on there that we didn't really talk about yet is 8-OHDG.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a cool one.
Yeah.
What does it mean? What does it do?
So it's a little acronym for 8-hydroxy-2-deoxyguanosine. That's way too much to say, so we shorten it to 8-OHDG. Yeah. Basically, if your DNA are getting damaged, they release 8-OHDG and it shows up in the urine. And so it's a marker for oxidative stress and DNA damage. But people freak out. Oh, DNA damage, it must mean cancer. For sure, it can mean cancer, but it may be something like you have chronic insomnia or you're having insomnia lately. Why? Well, when you can't sleep, you don't get melatonin. Melatonin is a super important antioxidant. You don't make growth hormone, which is like you're scrubbing bubbles in your body, and you're missing out on these key repair, antioxidant, regeneration pathways. Time in your, the night is when all this happens. Right. So now you're more prone to a higher 8-OHDG.
I see.
And so it can be something like, oh, I can't sleep. High stress can do it, but degenerative disease can do it. People who have disease is getting worse. And of course, unfortunately, cancer.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of oxidative stress there, a lot of DNA damage.
So if I heard you correctly, it can mean that there's active damage incurring, like with cancer,
yes, or
that there's kind of a lack of repair from sleep dysfunction.
Correct.
So you want to kind of figure out what that is.
Yep. And even with it'll elevate with like metal exposure, environmental exposure. So they have used it as a marker for people who've had like factory spills and what's the word I'm looking for?
Occupational.
Thank you. Occupational. Yeah. Like, what's the word where you work? Occupational exposure. They have used it with that to see if it's a problem.
Yeah.
And you can use it in kids too. Unfortunately, our test is not for kids, but it is quite sensitive in children.
That's good.
Yeah.
So you know if their school has mold or other crap, which is crazy.
Yep.
And by the way, you shared a paper, so definitely follow Dr. Jones on Instagram because you highlight all this cool stuff that you're researching into. And there was that one paper about mold and thyroid.
Oh gosh, it was so scary.
It's crazy.
Yeah, mycotoxin. Mycotoxin raises 8-OHDG because it affects your DNA and repair. It slows down your conversion of T4 into T3, so now you have less T3 and you have all these hypothyroid symptoms. It affects your cortisol, so maybe in the acute stage it'll raise it because cortisol is anti-inflammatory, but over a while it can downregulate it. Yeah, mycotoxin's a nasty one.
Yeah, and in the Northwest, we're all prone to this.
Because it rains all the time.
Yeah, and you're like, I noticed the windows in this house, they don't weep very well, and they'll just collect moisture there, and like you really have to watch it. It's crazy.
Yep.
I think it's a big problem for a lot of people.
And I think people don't realize it. They don't realize every time they go to work, their nose runs. Or every time I go to work, I cough more. Or when I come home, I go to work and I feel better. But when I come home, I cough at night, or I sniff at night, or I clear my throat at night. It's just like one example of a symptom. But it could be fatigue, it could be brain fog, it could be joint pain. I mean, mycotoxin can cause a lot of symptoms.
Yeah.
But even just little things, people watching might go, wait a minute, every time I go to work, I cough more, or I cough, or whatever. It could be a symptom.
Yeah, that's key. Some people say about the mouth taping thing, they'll tell me or type on Instagram or whatever and say, I would do that, but I can't breathe through my nose. It's that's not something you just totally ignore. Right. That's like saying well, I would drive my car, but like the trunk fell off. You're like, well, you kind of gotta like address that, right? You can't breathe through your nose. Like your nose is built to be breathed through. Like you need to breathe. That's
kind of its purpose.
Yeah. So anyway, like these small things, like you were mentioning. You go to work and you have a cough or you have a headache or whatever like that. Don't ignore that. That's a symptom saying there's some dysfunction you need to address. Yeah. So. And
obviously that's assuming you've ruled other stuff out. Like if you're going to work drinking your dairy,
chocolate milk,
right? Your mocha, your latte, and then by the time you get to work, you're like, I clear my throat more often. It could be dairy. Just keep that in mind, or whatever you had for breakfast. It could be that. Or if you didn't eat and you're not well regulated, then maybe your headache's from that. So.
Totally. Yeah, great tips. We could talk all day about all this crazy stuff, I'm sure. But we have a few final questions. This is your second time on the show, so you kind of know this, but I'm sure things have kind of changed a little bit.
Yeah.
We know that successful people have like habits and routines. In the morning they guard their time. We already kind of talked a little bit about your exercise, but what does the first couple hours of your day look like?
Well, I've gotten into the gratitude practice, and that has been huge for me. So I now... right when I wake up, I write down 5 things that I'm grateful for the day, and then at night I write down the 5 things that I'm grateful for that happened in that day. So what's coming up, and then what actually happened, and that's been really great. Low stress. I love it. It makes me get excited for the day, and then I usually, like I said last time, I work out. Usually, let's say most mornings. I work out, and then I have my green tea, and then I spend about 20 minutes journaling and meditating.
Cool.
And man, I feel like the greatest person for the rest of the day.
That's awesome.
So that's most mornings of my week.
Do you have just like a competition notebook that you write in?
No,
for the
I'm a
gratitude?
Girl. My journal is cute and it's striped and I love it. It has
flowers on it.
It has no, it has a heart on it.
Oh, cool. That's nice.
But I know a lot of people just have a composition notebook. But no, I'm totally a girl, so it's a cute little notebook.
That's awesome.
I mean, it's a journal. It's like that big.
Yeah. But the point is, like, the barrier to entry to start doing that is pretty low. Like, you can go to a drugstore and buy
a spiral bound notebook. I mean, it's just you writing in it. Nobody sees it but you. So
that's awesome.
I just happen to have this notebook, and I'm kind of girly, so
that's great.
So that's my morning.
That's awesome. Now, going back to the meditation, is there a particular style of meditation?
I have the Headspace app on my phone. So sometimes I'll do like an actual either guided or music set, at a particular amount of minutes. And sometimes I just actually pull up Pandora and set it to meditation music and just sort of freestyle it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So were you doing this stuff because when you were in private practice and you were thriving, doing really well, but I think now, to compare your life now to back then, like you have a lot more influence. Like you're traveling a lot, doing seminars, and you're just really concise with your words. Again, not that you weren't before, but like you're making a bigger impact. Yes. Do you think that these small little things have like influence your life in a different way? Or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I wasn't doing any of this. I mean, I was working out and drinking green tea, but not in a conscious manner, I should say. Like not in a thought out, planned, how am I going to make my day better? How am I going to set up my day for success? I didn't do any of that back then. I just charged forward and went for it. And now, I'm also older. I'm turned 40 last year. And so I need to take care of myself, and I kind of work for a hormone company that does testing for the endocrine system, and so I need to keep myself in check. And even medical directors of hormone companies have hormone symptoms and adrenal symptoms and HPA symptoms. So doing this stuff very, like I said, consciously every morning, most mornings, it just really helps me set my day and my intention. And I'm a big believer in that, and so it's just gotten that much better.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean,
I wish I would have listened back then when people told me to do it.
Yeah, right. You're like,
why
what
did it take
took me so long to do
Yes.
this? I know. I had this same conversation with Sean Croxton earlier today about a few gratitude things. My daughter and I listened to this. Oh gosh, Karen Durek. I don't know if you've heard of her.
No.
So she's kind of a spiritual, has healing music and things like that.
Okay.
And one of the songs is like, I'm so grateful for this day. Very simple song, and like it's got some music and in the background and everything going. And so we play this in the car with my daughter and stuff. And one day she just started singing like, I'm so grateful for this day. And I was like, that to me was like, this is crazy for a couple of reasons. Like it's working. But then I think of like all the rap music that I've listened to working out about murdering people or robbing or selling drugs or whatever. Like that's being planted in your subconscious. That's really not. We think about this perceived stress, like music, the news. I have a lot of practitioners that say, like, I used to listen to NPR, and now I just turn it off. I don't
watch any TV. I go to the front of Yahoo, because my personal email's Yahoo. So I'll click on Yahoo, and if it's not in the like 5 things across the screen, I have no idea what's going on in the world.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's that way.
To a degree, because I just don't. I can't. I cannot get sucked down that rabbit hole. I have bigger aspirations and dreams and things that I need to work on and not get focused on.
North Korea and...
Oh my gosh, all this awful negativity. I want to know about it. I want to be in the know and not... I don't want to be ignorant, but I don't need to hyper-focus on it.
Yeah.
Or let it ruin my day.
Yeah. Great point. Yeah, I have a friend too, that CEO of a tech company, and he's like... Sometimes we would have these conversations. He's like, dude, I just never watch the news because it's just stuff you can't really control, and it just puts that bad vibe, bad mojo in your head. And anyway, that was Tab Furcha who told me that. So,
and I still listen to rap when I work out. Sorry.
I know it is tough, right? Because it really does get you in the good mood.
Yes. Yeah. I don't necessarily, I mean, I'm choosy, but I still drop it like it's hot. Are you kidding? Absolutely.
Yeah. I personally struggle with that. I try to listen to other more calming music, but it doesn't get you in the mood.
You can't really get hyped up with Enya.
Yeah, it's tough.
You just can't.
Meditation music in the gym.
No, I mean, it's great for what it is, but man,
Yeah.
Pumping you up at the gym, not so much.
Right. I agree. All right. We agree on that.
Yes, but...
Good point.
Yeah.
So just clear your head after. Meditate after the gym to wash out those toxic thoughts. Okay. One herb, nutrient, botanical. You just couldn't live without it. Vitamin D, omega-3 is covered.
Yep.
You might be stranded on a desert island. What's coming with you?
I will tell you that the thing I'm taking every day now is broccoli sprout powder, sulforaphane.
Nice.
So last time I said my favorite herb was chaste tree berry for women. I still absolutely believe it's a great herb for women's stuff. But now for me personally, turning 40 and just estrogen balance and detox, I take my broccoli sprout powder, sulforaphane every day.
Cool.
Yeah, mostly every day, let's be honest.
Well, the cool thing about that is you don't really need to take it every day, I think, because it has an epigenetic effect.
Right.
So
right.
for people listening, like, oh man, more stuff, just it can be like a probiotic, like every third day or once a week.
Right, which is about how much I do my probiotics. So.
Oh, nice. There you go.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, but I mix it. I have this powder and I mix it in my smoothies, and
Perfect.
it's potent stuff. So sometimes I don't want that taste in my smoothie, which is when I'll not do it. But
Yeah.
I'd say probably 4 mornings a week I get it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. All right. So you're traveling, you're in an elevator with a prime minister of health, and they turn to you and say, Dr. Jones, you've been all over the world helping practitioners better understand how to interpret hormones and balanced lifestyle. I'm going into a meeting, we want to improve the health of our local community. What tip are you going to share with them in 30 seconds or less?
It would be, we need to find a lot of factors or a lot of ways that we can negate this stress. If we can't get rid of the stress, right? We can't get rid of the news. We can't quit our job usually. We, can't manifest overnight more money that we need, but we need to find healthy ways to manage our stress, because I think that is the number one component in all of America, or all of the world. I was going to say not just America.
Yeah.
Is how we handle our stress, how we diffuse at the end of the day, how we recollect, our thoughts and our happiness and our love, and get our oxytocin, our bonding hormone back up, and our cortisol back down. I think that's primary. If the world was just less stressed, stress will always be there, but if we just felt less stressed, I think we'd be a lot healthier and a lot happier.
I love that. We hear so much about GMOs and grow local food, and I think that's important, but perception of stress. Well,
that's part of it too, right?
Yeah.
Like if your diet is not stressful to your body, then you're going to just feel better and be happier, and your gut's going to be happier. I mean, if it's just, right, if you sleep better, you're going to wake happier, less stress.
Yeah.
If you follow your passions and, dive into your hobbies and write your gratitude and stay hydrated. If people don't realize dehydration is a stress. Drink your water.
Yeah, great point. All right, I have a kind of woo-woo question. Another thought that I've been thinking about. Okay, so you said if you eat healthy, it's not as much of a stressor, and you eat clean vegetables and all that. So what about eating cattle, feedlot cattle that are going through the equivalent of hell, right? I mean, these chickens, 10,000 chickens in a small little place, pigs that are stepping over each other. They can't be happy, right? So what happens when we eat their flesh, do you think?
I wonder if people subconsciously pick that up. And I know that's getting a little bit more studied, which I think is really scary, sad, but also neat from a nerd perspective, a geek perspective, because we're taking that in. We think is nourishment. You go to the restaurant, they're just serving regular old feedlot chicken. You eat it, and yet you are stressed out. You may already be stressed out, but maybe just that emotional imprint, that hormonal imprint is in there in that meat you're eating, and it could be contributing. Yeah. For sure.
I've had that theory in my head. It'd be hard to
It's hard to prove, yeah, absolutely. But what happens, it happens, this is a little bit different, or a lot of it different. Generational, right? Yeah. Lineage gets passed down. What happened to the grandmother may pass on through and even show up in the granddaughter. But I wonder if you actually eat something and now you're absorbing it and breaking it down, assimilating it. Are you assimilating their fear and their stress as well? I don't know.
It's an interesting question. Well, we know about mRNA, right? We know that we're eating that. So, maybe the epigenetic marks could be passed through the meat, and you're absorbing some of those DNA molecules.
It could, yeah.
I don't know. I've had this theory. And if you look at where crimes happen in bad neighborhoods and all that, the food that they're eating is what we're talking about here.
Right,
So it seems that there is potential.
I think, and like I said, I've seen it a little bit. In fact, I feel like I saw it just the other week for some reason. Somebody asked this question or posed the question. I think it'll get studied in that regard, and with our food system. People will say, I wonder if that has any impact.
Yeah, that's kind of next level.
Yeah,
it's beyond
there's
macros.
Not a lot of money in that. Yeah. Those feedlots do not want you testing their stressed out chickens.
That would not be good.
But I bet somebody eventually will come up with that.
Yeah. Awesome. Dr. Jones, it's been a lot of fun. So we talked a lot about the testing at Dutch and so forth. What's the best, if people are new to testing their hormones, whether they're a practitioner, nutritionist, or whatnot, and they want to learn more about that, where do they go online?
So 3 places. One, Dutch Test, so dutchtest.com. which is great. It's a great reference. We have a lot of videos. We will now be posting webinars. They're all going to be free.
Cool.
You can just watch it yourself. And then we're social media. Instagram is a big one for me. It's my favorite because I'm a visual person. So it's dr.carriejones at, or no, not at.
Dr. Carrie Jones?
Yeah, dr.carriejones. That's what it is for Instagram. And then at Dutch Test is obviously the Dutch Test. And it's pretty much all education is what we focus on hormones and testing and even thyroid, even stuff we don't test. It's super important.
Yeah, because it's all part of the puzzle.
It's all part of the puzzle. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for coming on again. This was a lot of fun.
Long time
I knew we covered a lot of stuff. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And then all the links that we talked about, I'll put it in the YouTube description below, where you can download those and learn more about it. And as always, thanks so much for tuning all the way in, and we'll catch you on the next video.